You know how when you've been doing a job for a long time, it kind of ekes into your brain quite a lot to a point where you actually have dreams that you're in your job, that you're doing your job in your dreams and you wake up and then go to work? Well, YouTube's kind of like that. And about 2-3 years ago, maybe it was post-pandemic and my brain was all scrambled eggs, I had a dream once that I was at a trade show and in my bag was a NAS. I had a NAS in my bag that I could just bring out, put on the table and work with, and I'd put it back. And everyone was like, woo, and really, really surprised about it. And I had this dream about this NAS, and I was so happy in the NAS that when I woke up, I was genuinely disappointed. And then when I woke up the next day, I was like Googling, trying to find such a thing. And shockingly, it didn't exist. It didn't exist at all. Because you could get hard drives that had Wi-Fi connectivity, you could get little portable drives, you could get NASs that run on low power. But an actual portable NAS that you could just pop in your bag, take out, put on the table, and just run on its own just simply didn't exist. And then this came along. This is literally the NAS of my dreams. This is the Unify UT2, and it is a genuinely portable NAS system. Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to talk about a NAS that genuinely excites me. I want to talk about the Unify UT2. Man, they got to be careful with that brand name. Whew, I think there's another company with that name. But what I mean when I say this excites me is the following. I've been in this game for a while, and I've seen a lot of different systems, and although some of them are more exciting than others, it has to be said that they all conform to a certain type, and therefore, although sometimes you see great CPUs and great connections and great hardware and great software, generally the format doesn't really change. And then something like this comes along. The Unify UT2 is a portable NAS drive in the most direct sense. I have seen hard drives from WD and Seagate rock out that are just hard drives with a little Wi-Fi adapter slammed on top. That's not a NAS, that's a wireless hard drive. This is a NAS. But hold your horses there, Trigger. It's important to note that this is a product that is about to, maybe at the time of publishing, go to crowdfunding. This is something that is seeking crowdfunding or fundraising from multiple backers to get it to market. It is, to me, a complete product, and much like when we talked about YouGreen and ZimaCube and stuff like that, it was a product that I thought was a lot further along development than simple indie crowdfunding was indicating. A lot of brands are rocking out now, utilizing crowdfunding websites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter as a marketing platform, a way for them to take advantage of the global marketing platform that is Kickstarter. So we're seeing a lot more products rock out that are a lot more finished than some indie startup project. That said, it doesn't mean that this is not legit, because it feels legit. It is definitely a real product, and as you'll see later on, the software indicates a large amount of development has already taken place. That still doesn't mean, however, that this is a product that is going to cross the finishing line, or that the product I'm reviewing today is going to be the intended product that will be distributed to backers who follow this campaign. So keep it in mind. This is a product on crowdfunding right now that will, if it does cross the line, maybe go into traditional retail. But more importantly, it is not traditional retail. So keep that in mind. Your money is not as secure with crowdfunding as it is with a general over-the-counter purchase. But back to the review. Unify, again, I'm going to get funny, really weird saying that name, sent this device to me. Again, they haven't paid for it. No one pays for reviews on this channel. I think it's weird that we have to say that, but there you go. This device arrived from them with a full accessory kit. Before we talk about this, I do want to talk about the accessory kit again, because something that's going through crowdfunding, this is a very complete package to me. The retail box is really, really shiny. They've already got the online relay service to access this remotely. On top of that, you have got, again, Ethernet cables. You've got HDMI cables. You've got USB power cables. That's C to C. More on that later on. You've even got a remote control and a battery as well, because this device has an HDMI output. And although some brands we've seen with a NAS that's got HDMI and you'd use your mobile phone to control it and then output, this allows you to do that, but also allows you to connect it up to a monitor, a TV, whatever, and just start watching TV and use the remote control to navigate the GUI. It even has a video app that crawls metadata the way Plex does, so you can use the TV movie database or the TV database or the movie database to get all of that metadata scraped to make your own Netflix, but more on that later on. It also arrives with an external PSU. Unfortunately, this is a US PSU, so it's fairly useless to me, but it's pretty well put together. It's quite a nice little model. It reminds me of some of those little UGreen ones there, and it's high-powered USB output there as well. You get a screwdriver, who cares? But you also get an SD card adapter there. Why? Because this device has two different SD cards there. You've got a standard SD card there, and you've got the CFE SD card there, and the adapter as mentioned earlier on. But that means you've got that 300 megabit or 30 megabyte input there for SD cards, and it even has a one-touch backup button if you choose to put your SD card in, click the button, and boom, back up the contents onto there. And the software that we'll talk about later on has got everything. Differential backups, it's got periodic backups to create individual directories, or it can just overwrite the same directory every single time. And that's really it. You've got your first time instruction manual and setup, and the manual is pretty detailed. I'll say it's graphical, it's got all the information you need, and there's an app for iOS and Android with other client apps to come. But what about the device itself? Well, it arrives in quite a similar rubber outside casing like you would find on a Lacy external drive. So this is a rubber removable casing there all the way around it. One of the things I really liked early doors is the fact that it has an Ethernet port there at the top. That is a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port there. So again, this is one of the many things that we're going to talk about that sets this apart from one of those wireless hard drives. But on top of that, you have further USB ports there. Both of them 5 gigabit USB, and we've got a Type-C and a Type-A alongside those SD cards. There is another USB port there, but this is a power delivery USB port, because one of the cool things is not only has this got USB-C and that power adapter included, the little micro one, but more importantly, this has got a battery. It's got a 2200 milliamp battery inside, and it can run for between half an hour to an hour with no additional power, depending on your utilization, which is pretty darn good, especially, and hold on for that when we talk about the CPU and the memory inside this thing. The casing underneath this rubber panel, again, we'll try and get that out of there. Once you've removed the rubber coating, you can see that it's a combination of metal and plastic there all the way around. It weighs in at just over 300 grams, which is sod all. And in terms of size, I could tell you the dimensions, but realistically, this is a Pixel 8. Here is my phone. This gives you some idea about the difference in size between them. It's not much bigger than my Pixel. Yes, my Pixel's in a case, but man alive, that is not big for a NAS drive. Now, alongside that Ethernet that I talked about there, via that RJ45 2.5 gig there, the system also has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth built in. There's LEDs there at the top. You can't quite make them out. In fact, hell, let's turn the system on so you can see them. And now the system's booting up. You can see the LEDs will kick in just a moment. There at the top, we've got the LEDs for storage. We've got one for networking. And on the side of the device, we have got there a little Wi-Fi symbol there to activate the wireless AP mode on this to be able to interact directly with it. And the same goes with the Bluetooth as well. Now, there is ventilation. You've got the fan there built into the side, and that is going to output with an active fan internally. The active fan is on. You can power it up and down within the settings of the software, much like you can a traditional desktop NAS. And let's bring that close to the mic. So yeah, pretty low noise, right? Now, I went into the settings and ramped this fan up to its highest, and realistically, it's not even that much higher than it. In terms of power consumption, we got this device while it was RAIDing 2 drives internally. We'll talk about that more in a sec. And that, with apps being accessed on a mobile app, only hit just over 15 watts of power consumption, which again, in a bigger NAS was still pretty good, but bear in mind this is running from a battery when needed to for half an hour to an hour. You can run it off the USB anyway, and it's got those two M.2 slots inside as well as that CPU and memory that we'll talk about in a bit. Now, opening the device up will show us the two M.2 NVMe slots inside. We open that up, and inside we've got two 1TB SSDs already pre-installed. I put those inside for the review. Again, these are Gen 3x1 slots from what I could see, and again, according to the manufacturer's own documentation, it can hit around 800 megs with those drives inside. Now, when you do set it up, you've got the option of setting up a traditional RAID, or like a RAID 1 or a RAID 0, but you can also use their own bespoke RAID system, which is comparable to a RAID 1, but on a folder level. What that means is, rather than RAIDing a RAID 1 where the same data is read and written to both drives all the time, you can pre-select individual folders that you want to make sure have redundancy on the other disk. In other words, rather than losing out a whole disk of capacity, you can make sure that certain folders are always mirrored across the drives for parity. It's still not a backup really, because you're all within one system, but still nonetheless, it's a lovely little option. I really admire the hardware design. There's a one-click, one-touch copy button there at the top. We've got SD card slots when a lot of NAS devices these days don't have them. And it's running on USB power, which is super convenient. Now, when it comes to the internal hardware, alongside those M.2 NVMe's, what keeps things moving? Well, the system arrives with technically an 8-core ARM processor. It's actually 2 different CPUs as I look at my notes. It's a ROC RK3588C, which is an A76 Cortex processor and an A55 Cortex processor. There's also Mali graphics as well for handling a lot of those more, graphical demands. But let's be honest, there's not a huge amount of difference between this and this. This is a mobile phone, but a NAS. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. We're seeing a lot of NAS devices arrive with mobile SoC processors. It's a done thing. We see laptops, tablets, the works. Extending that logic to this makes a lot of sense to me. Now, alongside that 2 4-core processors, or 1 8-core if you want to go nuts, is 8 gig of DDR4 low power memory there. Keep in mind you can't upgrade it, but still 8 gig is pretty darn good, directly soldered to the board. Now, another thing you can do, and we'll talk about this a little bit more during the software, because we will have to do a follow-up video on this. It's just simply too much to cram in. This also supports a direct attach storage mode. So although you can have it set up on your desk, and remember, it's still running while we're doing all this, not only can you use the wireless network, connect it via the Ethernet to your local LAN, find it and start interacting with it, again, supporting SMB, supporting all the file services you would expect, but on top of that, you can take this device, set it using the mobile application to the direct attach storage mode, and just connect it via USB. Something absent from most of the NASs on this side of the room. And this is a mobile sodding NAS. Let's crack on with that mobile app. Let's talk about how you control this, because as mentioned, we've seen enough mobile hard drives in the market. What makes this an actual NAS? Okay, so here we are on the desktop of my phone here. Just before we go into the app, it's worth highlighting that it is being recorded outside of the usual studio because I've got some noisy NAS stuff taking place. So I apologise if it seems a little bit echoey here for the rest of this part of the video. But if we go into the UnifyDrive app, I'm going to say straight away, I really like it. I find this responsive, and very early doors it kind of gave me a good indication of just what the scope of this mobile kind of pocket-sized NAS is capable of doing. And as you can see from the wide variety of settings and controls here on the screen, there is a lot to unpack. Now, software-wise, I am running version 1.1 of the mobile app, and the system is running on version 1.4, 0 to 1, etc. I've already checked, this is the latest revision. I'm sure there'll be further updates by the time this finishes crowdfunding, but making our way onto the desktop, I would say much like my comments I said a few months ago on the YouGreen mobile app, this is a very capable appliance. To put it into perspective, if we look at the different apps and services here on offer, we're able to see not only have we got full control of the system there at the top, where we can get full real-time information about the CPU, the memory of the system, each of our individual storage components that we put inside this system, the network connectivity, system cooling, network identities, and more. All of this, by the way, is fully customizable and controllable directly from within the app. But on top of that, you can break things down quite significantly throughout the course of the system's operation. To go into the settings menu there, for example, within the storage menu there, not only can we see each of the individual storage drives inside lined up to give us some information once we put them into a RAID, of course, they're not as visible, but not only can we get real-time information about the drives, but during the storage creation on this device, we've got those options of traditional RAID 1 or that UDR system And the UDR system there is the ability to kind of be a little bit more tailored about the synchronization of preset folders rather than the entire storage area, which allows you to be a little bit more, let's say, tactical about the folders that you want a mirrored redundancy on. Features such as defragmentation are available, expandability is factored in there. Again, everything you would expect from a desktop NAS system is present here. The same goes if you want to take advantage of that flash mode where you can connect the device directly. That is ready and available here, and you can do it as individual drives if you choose, as well as selecting individual file systems. It's really well presented and controllable within the app. Now, much like a NAS, you've got controls for things like SMB, so again, just traditionally in map, network, drives, windows, that sort of thing is all configurable here. Now, we've only got a single Ethernet port there, of course, so, you know, things like multi-channel aren't really going to be an option here, but it's still good to have configuration settings for things like WebDAV for SMB. There's other protocols supported as well. File sharing, indeed. You can select all of them individually, and I don't quite like that all of them are on by default, I will say that. I still quite like the sheer range of settings and controls that are presented to me on this mobile application on a mobile NAS drive that genuinely would, you know, rival that of its desktop contemporaries. Controlling the individual wired and wireless networks there, going into the Wi-Fi that you can do as a hosted hotspot or forwarding onto others. Port forwarding, indeed. There's so much you can play around with here on this system and via this app. They've really kind of found a very good line for how this is being presented and controlled via a single interface. I'm not going to say that, for example, the network configurations have been made user-friendly, but they've been made more user-friendly than I've ever seen in a system like this via a mobile app. And again, if you want to take advantage of the hotspot configuration and therefore allowing multiple users without relying on an external Wi-Fi connection to, you know, communicate data on the NAS via their respective apps, you can do that. And it isn't just limited to one user. You can create multiple users if you choose directly from within this interface. It isn't just a single user there. Now, again, the presentation of the app, of course, will change from user to user, and a lot of that is configured within the NAS itself rather than the application, but there's a huge degree of control, right the way down, by the way, to not only changing off that LED light, and indeed having the system's fan there being configurable if you choose, but you can also add the system when you want it to turn off after a certain period of time. You can even add the scheduled on and off if you choose. Again, I've seen desktop NASs not support this feature. The same goes for auto power up. If the system runs out of power, you can choose whether you want the system to automatically power on when power is reintroduced. And the same goes for that internal battery. The system having, I believe it was a 2200 milliamp battery, still allows for a good 30 to maybe 60 minutes of system running without external power, and then you can set it up to turn itself off after a certain period of time when the battery reaches a given point for preservation reasons. The HDMI output, again, we might be testing that later in this video or in a follow-up video, but having that remote control included and configuring it to output via the HDMI and controlling the remote control is genuinely unique in the NAS landscape, when a lot of the time the configuration and control is separated onto an IP access via, say, a web browser or an app, and the remote control has to work kind of to a limited capacity, whereas this is allowing us to do all of it to one. Again, sharing files, what you want to take advantage of with those paired files in UDR. Encrypted settings, you can create encrypted folders on this system. This has really got it all going on, and that is just the back end and the configuration and control. Then you go one step further and just go into the appliances and apps themselves. That's right, we're not looking at my phone app list. This is the list of apps you can access via this system, and there's a whole bunch of apps, as you can see there, that aren't even being displayed, some of which are in progress. Cloud backups, download links, you know, using BT, NZB, stuff like that. HD migration, I'm curious about these, and I'm going to add them all to the desktop just to know they're coming, but I'm still curious what they are. And as you can see, now they're added, and from here we can look at the apps and services themselves. We've already looked a little bit at the storage management, but we've got resource monitors that are dedicated, as we've already talked about. But What about multimedia? There's going to be those of you that are using this system as a portable alternative to Google Drive and such. As you can see, we can browse the photos that I've uploaded onto this drive. On top of that, if we choose, use the AI supported features, not only recognize faces where we can give these people names, again cycle through time, but on top of that, we can take advantage of AI photo recognition here to allow us to see different themes: food, supermarkets, architecture. I've only uploaded around 300 photos to this, but they're all still pretty good. They're not the most accurate. So for example, the food tab, it would have been nice to see kind of variables, different kinds of food, and the same goes for drink or whatever, but it's not terrible, and particularly for the scale of which we're talking about, I really like it. And you can see that they've scanned the geolocational information that are locked into the photos in the metadata to allow us to kind of break things down in terms of a regional area. But unfortunately, it's a bit disappointing. You can't really use a map feature. I would have liked to have seen them introduce a map. But apart from that, pretty darn good. And the AI Lab has got numerous up and coming AI supported add-ons, if you choose, that factor beyond just facial recognition, and you can do a great deal more kind of AI photo recognition if you choose. There's a lot of configuration, a lot of choice, a lot of options here. And if you bump into a new user that you want to grant access to the system, go ahead, go into the user center and create a new account, either with remote access or just local access if they choose. There's a great degree of configuration here at your disposal. The same goes with other applications and services too. Whether it is that you want general file access to access the system generally across the wide-ranging services and features, just browsing the photos and seeing what's on here, or if you want to take advantage of shared drives that you can create and share with clutches of users for production, for work, for education reasons, you can go ahead and create this shared folder and it'll all come together neatly. You really do have to respect just how polished this seems to be for a product going through crowdfunding, which once again only reiterates my feeling that this feels like a product that is already finished and is just taking advantage of the likes of crowdfunding just to get the word out there, to use it as a marketing tool. Whether you think that's good or bad is up to you. But pretty much everything you're going to need is present here. There's even little things that I really like the flash trans. Nice and simple, this gives you the ability to send files between registered users. So no longer do you need to use the likes of Facebook or WhatsApp or Google Drive to share files directly point to point. Flash trans allows you to use the NAS's connected user system to transmit files between them. If you want to take advantage of plug flash backup, this allows you to automatically back up SD cards and those more specialized SD cards, taking advantage of that 300 megabit transfer speed via those SD card slots that the system features. There's a whole bunch of features and tools here to take advantage of. I am curious about these ones at the bottom that are all stay tuned, coming soon. Perhaps the one for security, I would argue, needs to be done a lot quicker than any of the others, but cloud migration and cloud backup is definitely going to be one of those other ones. Ultimately, for a mobile NAS, this app, I would say, rivals some of the applications I've used on traditional full-size NAS devices. So, what do I think? Realistically, I do love this device, but again, because it's crowdfunding, it makes it very, very difficult for me to do a complete I like it and I recommend it recommendation. I just can't, because this might not be the solution that goes through crowdfunding and eventually gets delivered to backers. I can tell you right now, this is real. I can tell you it does everything it says it's going to do. And I think a company would be absolutely bonkers to go to the trouble of developing a product like this, developing the application, taking all of that time and energy to not release it to the mainstream if there is clear demand. But again, this is crowdfunding, so keep that in mind. What I will end this review on, but we will be doing a follow-up on this device with a lot more performance and stuff like that. I like it, and the market needs a product like this. It is the middle ground between portable NAS storage, secure local access storage, and a docking station that I think any photo video editor and his mum are going to want to carry in their rucksack. It arrives at $399 at early access crowdfunding, with an RRP reported at $599. Do I think this is worth $399? If it arrives, F yes. $599, I think it is a little high when you think you could actually get a real legit full-end NAS system for that sort of money. But given the scale, given what you are getting in terms of portability and the target audience this is aimed at, and the software features included and the hardware ports and connections, This thing is phenomenal. If this makes it through crowdfunding, I want to talk about this more, and I want to see competition to this device, because this is the sort of system I expected the likes of QNAP or Synology to rock out, and they simply haven't. Thank you so much for watching. It's a full detailed review linked below over on NAS Compares, and a link to the crowdfunding there below. Apart from that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've got recommendations for the follow-up video, let me know. But apart from that, I'll see you next time.